in front of you to share a few ideas that I believe will impact you and hopefully fundamentally change the way you look at certain things. Before I present to you the formal side of what I have to share with you, let me start off by recognizing my fellow panelists. Rare Witness Mdaka. Mr. Mdaka is someone with whom I've partnered in the podcast space, in the speaking space, and I'm glad to have energized him to such an extent that after I interviewed him on Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast, he himself embarked on his own podcast, and it blew up within a year and overtook Mogobe Nuggets, and that's the kind of competition I love. Round of applause. He's a dedicated young man. I've been able to interview different trailblazers and difference makers in South Africa, who he has helped me arrange to be able to interview, to add to our ecosystem. So, let's amaya, ke khona go tsamaya ke am sanzi ke go betsa big etletseng ke batla the cream de la cream ke ba interviewer. I hope you appreciate that effort. And then Mr. Seata Ratsosa. Some of you do not know Ratsosa is a member of the board, Mogobe Incorporated, and we've been together working on and off for close to 2 decades. Before he joined our board, he was actually my relationship manager for Standard Chartered Bank. And I dare say we experienced the greatest amount of growth. It's our aeroplane, he uses the most amount of diesel or fuel power when it gains traction to lift up. It was with his effort and with his involvement that we were able to take off as a company. And I appreciate to see him, he wasn't just satisfied in earning a massive salary in the bank. He left that job. He stepped out 3-4 years ago and started Masheleng, Mr. Masheleng. And I'm happy to say that at Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom, we're among the first to interview him and to introduce him as Masheleng when he first launched the book. I'm going to talk to you about legal and investment strategies for wealth protection. It is something about which I'm very passionate, and it is something about which I speak a lot with my mentees. Some of you may not know that we've had a mentorship program, Mogobe mentorship program in real estate that's been running for 6 years. And we have another mentorship program now, entrepreneurship in general, which has now been running for a year. It is something about which we are passionate. And to show you why I'm excited about this mentorship effort, I want to share with you something I got from my mentee this morning. And forgive me if I get choked up a little bit when I read what she has to say. She's just giving me an update on what she's been doing, and she tells me that she has since created 20 multi-residential units in the space of the past year, thanks to the learnings and the teachings that we've impacted on her. So she was telling me that thank you for that knowledge. And I'm glad that some of my mentees are here. Mr. Japani is here. I invite you to talk to him, see how he's exploded in terms of his bank account and his balance sheet since he joined the mentorship program, and quite a few others who are in the process of doing that. So perhaps a good starting point would be in the Bible. You moved me a little bit when you touched on biblical themes. So allow me, Mr. MC, to digress a little bit to touch on the Bible. And I want to start off by touching one principle that I shared with my mentees yesterday when we had a real estate session, which I think will help you. The principle is based on the concept of why a poor wise man was despised even after saving a city. Why was a poor man despised even after saving a city? Who's curious to know what happened there? Huh? Yeah. Na ke batla moduma ba gaetsho ha ke bua le lona ke batle tidimalo e heteletseng. Why this lesson can make you a multimillionaire. This is what I was teaching my mentees. The Bible tells the story of a poor wise man who saved a city in the book of Ecclesiastes from chapter 9, verses 15 to 17. Yet he was quickly forgotten and despised. This is a painful truth about life. Wisdom alone is not enough. Wisdom alone is not what? If you want to create lasting impact and generational wealth, you must combine wisdom with influence, positioning, and financial power. Financial what? Power. It's very, very important. Myself, I started taking wealth creation seriously when I realized this truth, that my wisdom, even if I'm top of the class, which I used to be, even if I get the best grades, which I did get, even if the brainiest and the brightest in the courtroom, which I did in court, that is not enough. I realized that the wisdom without resources is often ineffectual and is often ignored. This story teaches us that wealth and wisdom must work together if they are to make a real difference. So, if you are interested in going deeper and understanding the deeper nuances of what I'm just about to say, you must join the Mogobe Entrepreneurship Mentorship Program or the Mogobe Real Estate Mentorship Program. So I'm being shameless in marketing this aspect of what we do because I know the impact it will have in your bottom line. It will transform you in a significant way. And reality that as I've seen with my own eyes in the last 6 to 7 years as I was mentoring these entrepreneurs and as I was also mentoring others within the context of another organization that we have formed with others, other entrepreneurs called Angel Network Botswana. I've seen people transform. I've seen people, a lady, I don't have her permission to mention her name, but she started clueless in 2019 when we started working with her. Her products are being distributed in 67 stores across the whole of Southern Africa, Africa community in terms of SADC. Can you imagine? So people's minds can be transformed. But I'm limited. The legalistic stuff, so I won't go deeper. If you want to go all these other aspects, we are available. I have a team now. I don't mentor alone. Every mentorship session, I bring experts. I bring industry leaders who have done POC. And for those who don't know, POC stands for proof of concept. Other people call it traction. I call those people to come and demonstrate to you homo ga se ditoro. Ha ile re ke ditoro tse di nang di diragala. Okay. Today I'm going to talk about legal and investment strategies for wealth protection and growth. And forgive me if I get a little emotional on this one because it goes back to the Lerumo Mogobe days when we formed this company, which is still running. By the way, it's operating from the second floor, although we are soon to move to a revamped first floor. I'm touched a little bit talking about this, as you can see from the history, which Mr. Mabote may have touched on in his introduction. in terms of the group of companies that, by the way, I'm happy to share this with you after all this. If you are interested in sharing my presentation, I'm happy to, if you give me your heads up, I'll just pass on to you. So some things I'll be running through. Those are the companies that we are currently operating, and sizable number of them, I would say a third of them are in the real estate sector. Some are in hospitality and so on and so forth. And this whole idea of what we do is based on a concept called Mogobe Gentle Giant, and which I explain in greater detail in the book. It explains how we are set up in terms of the leadership at the top with the board and my family there, and then development. At any given time, for the last 25 years, we've been developing and building properties, including this one, in which we are comfortable in, and we're still building. We've now gone to Kanye, we're putting up something there. And then we have the acquisition division, where we acquire assets constantly. And this is what I'm teaching my mentees, the methodology for constant acquisition, so that you don't stop. You know, to me, growth and personal development is like breathing. There was a time when I was still into these things. I met a super rich man who was my client. I still had that old mindset. In fact, it's Mr. Jamali. I think you can confirm this. Mr. Jamali, why? Why are you building more sites? Why are you developing more properties? Why are you busy like this? When are you ever going to rest? Mogobe, when are you going to stop breathing? To me, this is like breathing. Huh? In other words, it has to come to a point where entrepreneurship, personal development, and your own growth becomes like breathing. And I dare say that by your coming here, you've given a clear indication that very soon your entrepreneurship trajectory and growth will be the same as breathing. It will be your second nature. You won't even have to think about it. So entrepreneurs and real estate investors must take proactive steps to safeguard their wealth. Without proper legal and investment strategies, businesses and estates can become vulnerable to disputes, to taxes, to creditors, and to unintended succession outcomes. Actually, I'm talking about unintended consequences. You know, picture this. You spend your life building wealth or building an estate. Some of you, I guess, would have somewhere in the region of 2, 3, 5 million saved up. You've built your own empire only for your assets to end up in the courtroom battle amongst distant relatives with lawyers that you've never met, just sucking your estate dry. Relatives, some of them have never even sent you a birthday card, let alone a gift on your birthday. Some of them may not even have sent you an SMS saying happy birthday. But they are there, they are the loudest. It's the wild, wild west. When now you've rested, you've gone, but they are fighting over your estate. So this guide that I'm about to share with you shares 10 nuggets. I can't get away from nuggets. 10 nuggets that you can use as a guide to avoid this happening to you. These are strategies that ensure that wealth protection and long-term growth can help you avoid these pitfalls. Look at the kind of fights I'm talking about. Strange people. Strange people fighting for your house. People that you've never met. One, the most argumentative auntie who comes there and shouts the most at your children. If she outlives you, she's the one who's going to grab a piece of your double-story house. You're like, uncle so and so, you know, uncle Matoladi born. Not to mention Ramantwani there. Random. But what I'm saying is that, do you want this scenario happening to your estate? It is easy for you to avoid this thing through the use of a thing called a will. I asked my team upstairs to bring a will. This is just a standard will that we've done. 3 pages. Through these pages, this testator, in this case it was testatrix. If it's a woman, we call it testatrix. You know, it's a bit of Roman Dutch law. It's something we inherited from Latin. And then the person who administers the estate is called an executor. If it's a woman, it's an executrix. Executrix. So, you know, but my point is this, that you can avoid this thing. A testamentary will is like a love letter to your heirs, except instead of sweet words, you leave them with legally enforceable instructions on how to divide your empire. Just as Mr. Siaka was alerting you to the danger of leaving this to fate, I'm also emphasizing this. In terms of the Wills Act of the Republic of Botswana, the validity of wills will be governed. It requires that these wills be in writing. The last minute, as it has been seen happening on a piece of paper, ICU. These forceful people are drafted because you never know what lies around the corner. Mr. God forbid. But thankfully, in 2007, I prepared my will and I prepared my trust. And last year, I updated it because I was beginning to talk a lot about this. I said, what about myself? And I realized that the will that I did in 2007 needs to be updated and changed. So if you fail to create a will, the government decides who gets what through a process called interstate succession laws, meaning your hard-earned wealth could end up in the hands of someone you wouldn't trust with your Wi-Fi password. You know? Let alone your password. The ideal strategy is to draft a legally binding will that eliminates confusion, disputes, and unnecessary drama. Consider this. Dying without a will is like throwing a party and letting the guests fight over the last piece of cake. Imagine. Huh? It's almost like what Donald Trump, when he was still a normal human being, used to say. Donald Trump used to say, marrying without an antenuptial contract is like marrying, it's like building a house without putting in the doors and the windows and expecting it to be protected. So dying without a will is similar to that situation. Throwing a party and letting everybody come. So I'm here to urge you to avoid interstate succession. What is interstate succession? Is where the government decides for you. Dying without a will is like throwing a party and letting the guests fight over the last piece of cake, I said. Interstate succession means that the state takes over the distribution of your assets. In particular, the person who will be in charge of this is the registrar. And remember that the registrar is dealing with hundreds of thousands of similar situations. He or she will not give undivided attention to your problems. He or she will respond to the loudest relative at that meeting, and I've seen it happen. I have had a situation where I was dealing with an estate of a couple from Maung, which was very successful. They had filling stations, they had meraka, they had multi-residentials all over Maung. What then happened, they fell into this trap of Banabari. When the kids are growing up, the kids will say, I want to do my own thing, you know. I'm going to be a doctor, all of the kids decided to do that, except one. And this one kid was the least educated and the least engaged one. Gante, this is the one who is watching everything. She's watching how they sign their signatures. She's watching how they do things. She's about an errand girl. But wait until batsadi ba tlhokahala botlhe. They, you know how the tendency is the one to follow the other. Ha gongwe yo mongwe a tlhokala, ha batho ne ba bereka mmogo thata ba utlwana, within a year the other one follows. That's what happened. And then I saw terrible things. I saw horror stories. This particular child contrived somehow to sign, to bond some of these properties, to sell them to third parties, giving them accounts about which only she knew, just because she didn't have the intelligence, that financial intelligence that Mr. Sata just spoke about. She, of course, blew that money, girlfriends, boyfriends, significant others. She was bawling. And I say to you, within a space of 9 months, that multi-million Pula estate, which we had originally estimated at about 35 million, had nothing. And it required all manners of litigation. The banks, when you go to the banks, this is confidential. How did you get this bond in your favor as a bank? How did you get the signature like this? One, the person is dead. Two, then the bank says, this is highly confidential. We cannot share that. And remember, the bank already has an army of lawyers. None of these kids, some of them were overseas, some of them were engaged in their own enterprises, had the muscle to confront this horror story or this injustice. So entrepreneurs should have a comprehensive estate plan. We have financial planners. Use them. That plan should be in place, ensuring that assets pass smoothly to intended beneficiaries instead of causing an episode of family feud. Like a family feud, Steve Harvey. So this one, it will be family feud, the inheritance edition. So let's avoid it, let's avoid it at all costs. So in addition to wills, there's an instrument called a testamentary trust. This is the one that Mr. Saka was talking about, Mr. Ratsosa was talking about, the one which is more comprehensive and detailed. I would urge very much that those of you who have a few assets, who have formed companies, who have interests or intend to do so, should vie in the direction of creating wills which incorporate testamentary trusts. A testamentary trust is like a bodyguard for your wealth, ensuring it is managed responsibly after you pass away. It protects assets from reckless spending, creditors' claims, and of course, family disputes. Imagine leaving your wealth to an 18-year-old. 18-year-olds or teenagers. Okay, if you die interstate, is by operation of law. All that wealth is going to that teenager. I've seen a situation where Wana now withdraw at the maximum limit permissible. I think that child destroyed himself eventually, got drugs. So look at it beyond protecting just your interests. You protect the interests of your children and your children's children. If you really love your children, you won't overfeed them with all that cold, hard cash from your estate. Imagine, the example I was about to give you was a child who was withdrawing the maximum limit. I think the limit at some point was 20,000 a day. A day. And she had the full power because it was one of these deals where you sign, I get a Mr. Sat, you sign over, go insurance company. Yeah, the will wasn't even in existence. And this child waited. 17. And the provision is that you get your dues, 21. So if you don't prepare a testamentary trust, which gives rules and regulations and guidelines, and I have an army of lawyers here. Hey, the lawyer, where are the lawyers? I'm talking legal stuff. Can you come forward, lawyers? I'm about this span. I'll give them a minute. Okay. Hey, Dumela. There are two more who are not here. because ba shy or ba go caught. I get it. Yeah, can you just explain, just in brief, what's the advantage of a testamentary trust? Only in one word, in one sentence.
It's basically to protect your assets and everything. And everything that you have.
You want to add?
No, as Mr. Mogobe already said, interstate succession is basically tossing all that you've built over the years and hoping it lands the way you want it to. So with a will, you're able to dictate exactly how you want your assets to be distributed. You're not just praying to God that once the courts allocate, they allocated the way you would have wanted to and in your best interest. So bagaetsho are diring the will. I know Batswana have this conception that go dira will ke go ikeletsa leso. It's not that, you're just preparing for the inevitable. Ke lebogile.
Thank you very much. Thanks for allowing me to ambush you like that. So business owners should strongly consider setting up testamentary trusts to align with our long-term objectives. Just see that little joke there. Honey, I really think it's time to address your trust issues. I get trust issues. Trust private eye, private detective, email, trace the email, and only a further sign here in 10 signs your husband is still cheating. So monna and out are all over these issues. You must have trust issues. Look at the wife's response. It's classic. Oh, I know. That's why I booked in with Katrina Jacobs. That's a lawyer. She does great things with testamentary trusts. So it's a different kind of trust. So what's the joke here? The joke is that, look, there are always trust issues between couples, but you can go a long way in addressing some of them by putting things in writing. You know, I believe in an ANC anti-nuptial contract, and I believe, Mr. Satla, you believe in an ANC? Yeah, and I want to ask witness, because there's already a viral video of him saying, no. It's not about emotions. It's not about emotions. It's about an agreement in black and white. So that, God forbid, if you split, you are covered. So, trust, it's God forbid, if you split in the literal sense of going away, not parting with your spouse, you are covered. And we all know we're going to split at some point. So we should not debate this one, because it's not if, it's when. I get it. So let's cover ourselves. So would you leave your business in your toddler's name? Some of you have toddlers, and the registrar, I know, who's your next of kin? That toddler. Okay, give it to the toddler, but put in the protections. Find an executor, find an administrator, create a trust, and have trustees. Have trustees and go and see lawyers who have the capacity and ability to assist you. Shameless plug. Okay? So structuring business ownership for long-term protection. Let me touch on this one. Now, in the same way as you cannot leave your business and your estate to a toddler, failing to structure a business ownership, especially where you have partners and you have co-shareholders, can lead to equally disastrous results. Holding businesses in your personal name, for instance. Some people still insist on running their businesses as sole proprietorships. Stop that, Bakhetsu Emisang. Don't run the business in your own name. Form LLCs, limited liability companies, aka proprietary limiteds, PTY LTDs. Proper legal structuring also ensures smooth transitions in the event of death or incapacitation. Entrepreneurs should work with legal and financial experts, and of which there are plenty more Botswana, to create that setup. Here is roughly the way the program will look like. It will be the trust at the top, the testamentary trust, And then there will be the main LLC. And then under that one, you will have a series of LLC running different businesses, but under this one. So you'll have one holding company with other independent entities running under. Almost like what I showed you in the Mogobe Gentle Giant, where you have these individual entities under. Okay? So that is the setup that we have. At the moment, we're working on setting up our 14th business entity. We're always growing what we have. And the intention is that once everything is done, once all the formalities are undertaken, don't read too much into that comment. Yeah. But that is the point I'm saying. You're also avoiding forced liquidation, estate liquidity planning. If your estate lacks liquidity, your heirs might have to sell off key assets just to cover taxes. And on this liquidity, so I cannot emphasize more strongly. I mentioned to my mentees that even in the Bible, the book of Genesis, and I think it's chapter 46, where Joseph says, you must put aside 1/5 of the harvest, talking to Pharaoh, when interpreting that dream about those skinny cows and those skinny cobs of corn. He interpreted and said, put aside 1/5 of the harvest. Now what I'm saying to my mentees, go beyond 1/5, which is 20%. Save 30%. That's what I say to my mentees, because I've discovered that with inflation, with other unpredictable things that happen, 30% is stronger. But I have people who would argue, for instance, Mr. Templeton. Mr. Templeton was a great leader, all familiar in Templeton, is it CC? But it's a big conglomerate that does, trusts and investments. He formed this conglomerate, was even knighted. He died in his late 90s. But his belief was that him and his wife set aside 50%. 50% of everything that they make. So you can go more aggressive and set aside 50%. Imagine how wealthy, how super wealthy you will be. Huh? You'll be so wealthy that habatu ba kopane ko funeral le mongwa tlhoka hetse. We so goroge go tla bogote. Emang pele re emele batho. Which is what will happen. Huh? Ha motho a re wa bua bana ba gole ba sa ba golwa nya batho ga ise ba goroge go twa wena. Okay? Because you've simply had the discipline. Because the issue is not how much money you get. It's just how much you keep. If the issue was how much money you get, we wouldn't have situations that I have where I've given so many examples of permanent secretary versus a cleaner, where the permanent secretary, after 40 years of work, amugala my 50K per month. Within a year of leaving work after retirement, the PS is broke. He had all this wisdom, but he's broke. Whereas the cleaner who was receiving 1/50th or 1/30th of what the permanent secretary was getting, and what she did, first salary, regulated bags, it's a cement. Second salary on her sharp lot, exactly like the grandmother, exactly like he mentions the grandmother. I know a number of cleaners who have done that, and as a result, they took the permanent secretary. I don't know, I'm just saying. They took them to the cleaners, so to speak, in terms of economic success at the end of the day. So you can avoid forced liquidation. Life insurance and investment reserves provide the necessary liquidity to cover estate obligations. Entrepreneurs should ensure their estate has sufficient liquid assets. If you don't trust yourselves, why don't you automate it, Bahet? Why don't you have an auto, like I do? I can at stop order. Can I several stop orders that go straight to the savings plan? Because you never know. Even in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 11 of Ecclesiastes, it talks about why don't you have 8 sources of multiple streams of income. I can talk about it. We teach about it in a mentorship program as well. You need to have, the Bible says at least 8, because you never know what lies around the corner. I get it. We also have buy and sell agreement. Buy and sell agreements, it's like a prenup for your business. So, you guys are like me. When I met Paul, Paul because Paul. That was my first partner, who is now Judge Itumeleng Sehopolo. He's a judge of the High Court of Botswana. There was no agreement, there was nothing. Okay? Luckily, there was enough goodwill between us. But we've seen time and time again, both as lawyers and certainly as judges go High Court, they didn't have this prenup. It ensures that ownership transitions smoothly if a partner dies or exits. Okay, by show of hands, who has such an agreement already in place? By show of hands, who needs to have it? Okay, all right. So please, we are available to help you. Without such an agreement, surviving family members may inherit a business stake that they cannot manage, leading to conflicts or even forced sales and destruction of your business. These agreements can be funded by life insurance as well, allowing the remaining partners to buy out the deceased partner's share. You can ask us how we do it, because we've done it for others. Entrepreneurs should establish legally binding buy-sell agreements to prevent unnecessary disputes or liability. So I'm just going beyond the issue of the will, the issue of testamentary trust. I'm saying get prenups for your businesses as well. I like this cartoon. You see, there's a man sitting down there. Already relatives, business partners. I'm sure I can trust you not to fight over my money when I'm gone. All of them say, of course. And yet, a baseball bat, a knife, this torture item. Labon. Can you imagine? You know? So why don't you just assume, unless there's an agreement, this is what's going to happen? Because you cannot predict human behavior. In fact, you can almost predict for it to wave towards the negative side, where money is concerned, where assets are concerned. We've all had horror stories of situations where monna tokahala asanyala musadi, right? Meba nam moho ba accumulated the assets moho ba tsolabana moho. After 30, 35 years, 40 years, monna tokahala hole Monday. On Wednesday, ba ho katraka ikima ba rola dithoto. Either that or ba kuba musadi or modimo motlu. You know? That's where the concept, which we've also discussed in the nuggets, the concept of forming a partnership, a universal partnership comes in. That's a subject for another day. But a universal partnership is where you stay long enough with somebody and you haven't signed anything, but a universal partnership can be assumed by the law under certain circumstances. I'm just giving you a clue. These are some of the cases and matters we deal with. So let me talk about real estate investors as I get closer to my Real estate is one of the most fought over asset classes. Just ask any lawyer who's handled a family inheritance battles. Without a clear succession plan, this is succession planning now, multiple heirs may claim rights over the same property, leading to prolonged court battles. Joint ownership structures, therefore, are ideal. Real estate holding companies and trusts help to ensure this smooth transition. So the most important person for this purpose is an executor. Cannot be trusted 100%. But who you can appoint as an executor. I've seen banks like FNB having an estate division where it's possible under certain circumstances where you can say someone from the bank can be appointed as an executor. I myself have been appointed as an executor in a number of wills over the years. So you can go to your trusted lawyer and put them there. But be cautioned. You need permission to you. And then the good thing is that if it's a good lawyer, they're going to insist that you produce umang yamoto their latest contacts. Through that, the lawyer is able to verify hore moto motsenya mo willing or motsenya mo that testamentary trust udumalang. So he's appointed specifically to administer the will, and in choosing the executor, you have to be careful. It's like picking a captain of your ship. Again, you need someone competent, trustworthy, and financially literate. You need somebody of the competence, and people like that, but the Administration of Estates Act mandates that the executors settle debts, distribute assets, and act in the best interest of the beneficiaries. Acting in the best interest of the beneficiaries is the touchy one. Okay? So you need to be sure when your best interests at heart, male ethical. As not scandal. Mugugule pele. Mugugule pele. It's on all Facebook and all the platforms. Agana the skeleton. Pele how my point. Picking the wrong executor can lead to delays, legal disputes, wealth mismanagement, which is a tragedy. Entrepreneurs should carefully select an executor who can efficiently manage estate affairs and ensure his wishes are carried out and executed smoothly. Now, what are these asset protection strategies available as I conclude? Entrepreneurs often face legal and financial risks. I think we are all entrepreneurs here. You are all entrepreneurs because you are in charge of Me Incorporated. Your company now might have Mogobe Incorporated, but Lonalonale Me Incorporated. You have a duty to make sure that you treat yourself as entrepreneurs. I often say, those who are not running their own businesses as entrepreneurs, they are entrepreneurs, which means they are running a business within what? Within someone's business. Or they are running it entrepreneurially. They think like somebody with an entrepreneurial mindset, even though there's somebody else signing their paycheck. So I'm urging all of you to structure your assets within trusts, LLCs, or corporate entities which provide legal protection against personal liability. Okay? Family trusts, in particular, can safeguard personal wealth from business-related risks. Business owners should work with legal experts to ensure wealth in a structured way, to avoid vultures. The vultures are the thing. Let's accept that. And potential lawsuits. Regularly reviewing and updating. This is the important part. This is what I did, and I did it last year. Now it took too long. I went from 2007 to 2024. Ideally, one should do this every 3 to 5 years. Regularly reviewing and updating your estate plans is not a case of set it and forget it. No. Kind of a deal. It's not that kind of deal. It's a deal where you know that laws changes. The ground is always shifting from under my feet or under your feet. Life happens. Some of them even say, some of you guys here, even something that starts with an S happens. I won't say what it is. So that something happens, okay? And that something can hit the fan. I give a little restaurant thing, come on, so I don't want to say the way he talks. Major events such as new business ventures, marriage, divorce, or acquiring new assets necessitate updates in terms of the plan. And it's not just that. As beneficiaries in your will, in your testamentary trust, change. A manifest a manifest then a boom observer for 6 months with taro. So you may consider, then you quietly go. You don't tell him, of course, or her. But you can amend, it's allowed. Because the will of the testator is supreme. We also we always remind in the law of testacy, the law of wills and succession, that the will of the testator is supreme. The courts will bend over backwards under Roman Dutch law and even under Setswana law. I dare say traditional law, the will of the testator is supreme. So put your will in writing, update it as you need to. So you ask yourselves, why is Mr. Mogobe telling all this? Why are we bombarded with all this information? Here's the answer. This is my conclusion, and these are the action steps that you need to undertake. Both entrepreneurs and real estate investors must take estate planning super seriously. I know quite less seriously, but I'm adding super seriously to protect their wealth, to ensure business continuity, and provide for their families. And the thing about it also, it gives you peace of mind. It gives you space to create. I dare say, tell you, most of what you see now in terms of the growth of our business, we've been able to 10x it about 3 times, occurred after that initial act in 2007, where I knew that everything was safe. It gives you a certain amount of peace. You actually start sleeping like a baby. A little sidetrack joke, when you say sleeping like a baby, someone says, you want to sleep like a baby, but a baby wakes up every 2 hours crying. So you don't want to wake up. So it's sleeping like a baby, I mean the baby before he wakes up every 2 hours. So the right legal and investment strategies will preserve assets, prevent disputes, and allow smooth transfer of wealth. I'm a lawyer, I just love disputes. Disputes, when you come to me or come to my firm, make me money. But I don't want to make my money this way. Backstabbing, where you are able to remove that kind of backstabbing. I think you'd get the picture. I don't want to make my money that way, just because I've been instructed by one of these people. I have to go to court and defend. But it's happening on a daily basis. I would like you to come to me, Luntalora, I've got this will. Can you update it? I want you to come to me, God forbid, your relative, Mr. Mogobe, can you read our will? I had the pleasure of doing that for the Temanes. Because of the way I had written the will, the estate was wound up beautifully. And I even thought of the man who was my personal mentor. May the Lord rest his soul. I don't want to imagine. Remember, failing to plan is in fact planning to fail. So without any fear of contradiction, I better spend the next 6 months, let's say, in the sense that I'm talking about, you will actually be planning to fail. Because you are failing to plan, I'm assuring that you are failing to play. You are planning to fail. And no one wants the hard-earned wealth to end up in the wrong hands. So here's your next step. Draft or update your testamentary will and consider a testamentary trust. Okay? Luckily, I'm going to share with you this presentation. So in terms of definitions and understanding basic principles, you are covered. But in terms of execution, in terms of fulfilling what I'm sharing with you about, you won't be covered. Okay? That's why I gave the example at the beginning, that wise man, that poor wise man who saved the city was despised. You have all this knowledge, you have all this mechanism for saving your future, but you are not executing it. Your heirs, your descendants are going to despise you if you don't cover their backsides. By in your bloodline, because the relatives from all corners, and sometimes they do it when they are just facing the bereavement. Bora motho tsamaya hela ke tla sign na ke batlile nga. Some kids are like that. We know you have the soft ones. You know, now when I imagine my 4 children, I know I have the soft, meek ones who can be trampled over very, very easily. So I'm always concerned. Don't worry, guys, I won't mention anyone by name. So now as a father, I'm able to see, or no, I have to protect them as well. So the next other step, ensure business ownership structures align with estate planning goals. Implement asset protection strategies, as I've explained. Work with legal and financial professionals. Here I talk about reputable ones. Unfortunately, there are some in my profession, by how you go law society. So I would urge you, when you want to use a lawyer, don't just use one with no complaints for law society. Ask the law society, are there any pending issues? The law society might be inclined to tell you. Sometimes they will tell you, hey, you're not the issue that pending the. Because, you know, when I was practicing actively, and I still am, but more actively, without these other businesses distracting me, I can say to you, this problem did not exist. Now the problem exists where lawyers with beautiful offices, nice insignia, how it's an air conditioning, I think is tops. You know? We see a lot daily the biscuits. These days you have lawyers in that category, by Lenghore. My dear hearts and I'm trust accounting. Sometimes you never see it again. So do your due diligence even there. Work with legal and financial professionals and regularly review your plans. Taking these steps today ensures your wealth and legacy remain protected for generations to come. Because after all, the best way to predict your financial future is to create it now. So the best way to predict the future, I think a wise man, a wise entrepreneur once said, the best way to predict the future is to create it. With those words, Bagaetso, ke motlotlo ebile ke tlotlometse for having spoken to you. Ke a leboha.